All right, there we go. Welcome to Coffee with MBA Beyond, everyone. It's lovely to have you here tonight. And today we are going to be speaking to two very amazing speakers especially for candidates who are interested in going to top schools, M7, T25, T10, with an aspiration to land a job in consulting, finance, or asset management, or tech for that matter. I'm just going to be doing an introduction for our amazing speakers in a bit. I'm Paradi, co-founder of MBA Beyond, and you'll soon be meeting Josh and Harshal. I'll take a moment to walk you through what should your mindset be when you're speaking or when you're listening to the session today, because if you're looking forward to working with MBA Beyond, we would really like to understand these two answers from you for the questions. Which top 3 schools are you applying to in round 2 and why? So please open your minds to understand and take everything in from our amazing speakers today and answer these questions. Second question would be, what do you think is your most unique selling point? So we'd like to understand what's your differentiator here. Top 3 candidates who are chosen, of course, we are going to evaluate your profiles and we're going to choose 3 candidates who are going to get up to 20% discount. Also, by the way, guys, happy Diwali for all the Indian folks sitting here. I know today we've got people from Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, India, and a few folks from Canada and US are also joining us. All right, let me jump on to quickly introducing the agenda before I jump onto the introduction for the guys. So we're going to talk about how to plan your applications to get into top 25 US MBA programs, top 10 EU programs, or some of the top Asian programs. How to choose the right schools to maximize your chances of conversion. How should you plan your applications if GMAT is not taken or you've not scored well? So you were kind of in a state, in a limbo where you're reappearing and you don't know whether you should start working on your applications or you should focus on reappearing first and then take up the application journey thereafter. Then we're going to talk about how to interact with the adcoms the right way, how to show leadership achievements, contribution to the community, how to maximize your chances for scholarships, because I know some of you are really eyeing scholarships. Some of you we've already spoken to, so we know that's what you're really looking at. Moving on, we've got Harshal with us tonight. Harshal is an MBA graduate from INSEAD. He also did his master's in finance from IE Business School prior to his MBA, and he has 5 years of consulting experience focusing on strategy and project management roles in complex projects across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia. So very global perspective he brings to the table here today for all of you. He has a keen interest in investment management topics. So like I said, finance, he's your guy today. He was a teaching assistant for the investment management course at IE Business School and served as the president of the investment management club at INSEAD. Having gone through the whole application, the daunting journey of taking GMAT, reappearing, and then filling out the applications, and he's done it twice, not once. So he has an extensive experience, and he really brings in great success stories to the table for all of you guys. He's been helping candidates get into some of the top schools for years now. Moving on, we've got Josh with us. Welcome, Josh. It's so exciting to have you here with us tonight. Josh is a Booth and LBS alum, so a perfect mix of MIM and MBA if that's what you guys are looking for. He went for his MIM and then he went for an MBA at Booth. Having started his career in Dubai and Singapore at an elite boutique investment bank focused on tech and M&A, Josh understands how hard it is to break into finance and navigate international job market, and is experienced in helping both American and international candidates get into top business schools. So he's also a co-chair of Booth's Investment Management Club. Again, finance guys, years there. So Josh can specifically help candidates looking to break into asset management, having also received multiple offers from Bain and Qualcomm Strategy. So he's also your guy for consulting and tech. He's very fluent in German and conversational in Mandarin. Josh has lived in 6 countries and hopes to live in many more. Welcome, guys. I'm going to hand over the mic to you. Stage is yours.
Thanks, Brady. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
okay,
loud
great.
and clear.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks so much for having us, speak with you today, and happy Diwali for all the Indians on the call. When starting this journey to the MBA, there's a lot of introspection that has to happen. You got to understand why you want to do the MBA and how it's going to help you. So going through these questions will help you navigate that journey. So the first question you need to understand if you want to get into a top school is why. And answering that why generally comes down to your goals for your career and life. And for the two main things then are, what do I want to do and where do I want to live? And I know that that's very important in my own life because I've lived in so many countries. So when I was thinking about MBA, I thought, I've already gone to LBS for my MIM, my Master's of Management. Maybe I want to do INSEAD. Maybe I want another crack at Singapore or want to go back to Europe. But as a US citizen, I thought, you know what, it's time to go to a top M7 MBA. So my strategy was I applied to all the top 10. I got into 4, and then I went to Booth for a dual degree with computer science, right? And so beyond geography of what your work rights, your visa status, where you see yourself living, and by the way, salary comes into consideration there too, because I love the European lifestyle. Well, there's more vacation time, for example, but the US does pay a little more. So there's all sorts of things to consider when choosing a geography. Finally, when choosing a top school, you have to think about the strengths of the school. So when I was thinking about perhaps going to INSEAD, I knew if I was going, I should really think, okay, am I happy to be a consultant? And I'm not saying that everyone is going to go to be a consultant at INSEAD, but INSEAD is incredibly strong at placing into MBB and top firms like Oliver Wyman or LEK. So you might get into a top investment bank. People do that. I have friends who've gone to like Morgan Stanley, London from INSEAD, et cetera. But if you want to be an investor, if you want to do private equity, if you want to do asset management, it's going to be a little harder for INSEAD. And the reason is because it's a one-year program, right? So a lot of these finance firms want to see that you do an internship in finance. You can do that with INSEAD because they do have that option, but you just have less time. So you need to understand, like, some schools are just better for certain industries, right? So then I was thinking, okay, I really want to try to do finance and particularly like investing in the tech space. So it came down, like, to me, maybe I got into Berkeley. Berkeley is in tech, as a decent finance school as well. Then I got into Booth, and practically globally, I would say there's like 5 really strong finance schools. That'd be like Wharton, Booth, Columbia in the US, London Business School in Europe, and then Harvard, not really because it has a super strong finance curriculum, but the brand is so strong. So Booth was the school I got into, and I decided to go. So once you decide what you want and where do you want to live, you should understand exactly what those schools require, make a timeline, work with us, or make sure that you succeed in getting those things done, and then give yourself some buffer time. 1 week is really too late, but at least 1 week you should have everything done so that if there's anything that you forget, you can address. Okay, so the next question then, how to choose the right schools. Just real quick, like, when choosing the school, make sure that you understand their stats. So, Booth's average is about 733. I think LBS is around 710 or a little higher than 710. Those differentials is usually because there are more US applicants applying to the US, and they have stronger native English skills. So there's a little bit of a bump. But generally, if you see the difference in those GMAT scores, you really need to think about where the quant score is, because they may give international applicants a little bit of slack for the English score, the verbal, but they want to see a really strong quant score. So it's not as simple as, oh, INSEAD and LBS have lower GMAT scores than the US. They must be easier. No, you need to check the quant score. Okay, we can go to the next question. Okay, so yeah, we're just talking about the GMAT. So, if you really want to apply in this round, this cycle, and your GMAT, you haven't done your GMAT, or you didn't score very well. So, the beauty of an MBA as a professional sort of early mid-career degree, it's not like undergrad. You can apply as many cycles as you want, or as long as you want. Well, until you start becoming too executive, and then it no longer makes sense. But generally, you still have another 2 or 3 years that you can keep applying. And my advice for applicants who have a good background, so they already have a good undergrad GPA, they have a progression in their career. If their GMAT is not where they want to be, and they feel like they could get into a top 15 to 25, but they really want M7, take a year, like take time. You need to take the time, and you need to crack 730, 740 plus on the GMAT, or 330 plus on the GRE, and succeed, right? Don't be afraid to take a little more time to succeed. You'll be on a permanently different path, right? So anyway, because of the pandemic, because of COVID, and because business schools are trying to increase the amount of applicants they receive, many schools actually allow for a waiver. So if that is the case, and you don't have a strong score, but you have a strong background, then you should just apply for the waiver and leverage the strength of your background. In any case that you feel you can optimize the GMAT, you should try to do that, even if that means delaying the application a little bit. But I would say, so I had a 740 GMAT, but the quant was a little weak, and the 740 GMAT was enough for me to get into the booth. It might have been enough for me to get into the Master of Computer Science at U Chicago, but the quant was only a 48, and generally they wanted like a 49 plus, and I couldn't do it for whatever reason. So I took GRE, and I got 168 out of 170. I can tell you it's an easier test on the quant. It's probably a little harder on the verbal. So if you really need a stronger quant, I would say take the GRE. So with that, I'll pass it over to Harshul.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Harshul. I don't know if we have already gone through the introductions, Paridhi. Maybe we would want to switch back a bit. There was some confusion in the right link.
I'll let you. Yeah, I introduced you, but you can go ahead and introduce yourself all over again. I don't mind taking you back, and then I'll come back here.
Yeah, let's just keep the page open, and then I'll introduce myself. So I'm a recent MBA graduate from INSEAD. I also did the Wharton Exchange while I was at INSEAD. I'm also a master's in finance and the last batch of Delhi School of Engineering. So I come from an engineering background, and I've been a consultant all my life. Traveled to at least 15 countries, delivered projects, lived in 6 countries and counting. And one of the basic reasons for me doing an MBA was to shift my family to Europe. Also because I had already done a master's, I was familiar with the vibe, and in terms of long-term planning, it made sense. Yeah, so that's my background, and let's jump back to the questionnaire, and from there on, we'll see if anyone has any questions, and we'll try and be as interactive as possible. Okay. So how to interact with the adcoms the right way? I would say there's no recipe to it, but there's definitely a basic standard nowadays. Back in 2015, when I did my first master's, there was a very little need to network, although people used to. But LinkedIn and social networks for professional executives wasn't as big a trend as it is today. And now I've been at least I've been noticing on the European schools, a lot of these schools have started creating their online presence. They even have their INSEAD, official INSEAD Instagram pages, not INSEAD. And they are looking for prospective students to interact as much as possible. And in such context, there are various mechanisms that have come into factor because of the COVID background and the world being in the lockdown for the last 2 years. Essentially, originally the adcoms and their support teams used to travel to various countries and hold up, in-person seminars, coffee chats for students to come and interact with the adcoms. Essentially, if there were any alums on the in the local base, wherever these adcoms were traveling to, they would also join and sort of spread the word and interact with the prospective candidates. Since COVID, most of the schools have, at least on the European side, they have gone on to host online channels. They have started offering coffee chats one-on-one. They have started offering group chats wherein the students can actually log in and pose their questions to the adcoms. And in case if there are any alums who are participating in those group chats, they can also interact with the alums, just like how we guys are doing it here. Essentially, in the last 6 months to 12 months, I've also noticed that there are a few support teams that have come up, and the adcom teams are essentially collaborating a lot with the marketing teams, wherein they are specifically targeting content for prospective students to show them what's the trend in terms of the job profiles, what is the trend in terms of the intake profiles for these B schools. And at the same time, if they find through their various comprehensive chats with these students, if they find that these students have been, they have interesting profiles, then you might just out of the blue also get a proposal to do a one-on-one chat or a one-on-one coffee chat with the adcoms, which didn't used to happen in the past. So definitely, I would say networking is a very good way to sort of find your right match in terms of the B school, because there's always a vibe check. LBS, my interactions with LBS were very different from my interactions with IE Business School versus INSEAD, and also with IESE. So yeah, back to you, Josh, if you would like to add any thoughts on this question.
No, I think you covered it very well. And if you have any additions to what I talked about, feel free to chime in.
Sure. I guess when we go to the Q&A section, some of these questions might come up. So let's wait and see. And okay, there's yeah, Paridhi, go ahead.
Because there's two candidates we're talking about has answered.
I don't know, but I think there is some disturbance on your side, Paridhi. Not able to hear you.
Or testing it with you and everyone.
No, can't hear you. Yeah.
Looks like sometimes technology fails you. So
Are you loud and clear?
Yeah,
it's always
so
the AirPods.
Yeah, I don't know what went wrong with these, but anyways, I was like, let's take a pause for a minute, because we've got two candidates who are coming from non-profit background. Even though Josh has answered Neha, but Dean also wants to know, and they want to ask, which schools do you guys recommend are good for non-profit experienced candidates? And Dean also has a question that he's not so good with quant. So is that okay? What would you recommend to an aspiring applicant like this?
Sure. So let's start from the first question on non-for-profit, right? That background is a very interesting one. I would say just saying non-for-profit doesn't count. You have to have done really exhaustive work in that field, and it depends on the impact that you have created. And it doesn't matter if it's wide scale or it's grassroots level impact, you should be able to bring it out in your application. Having said that, and take it with a pinch of salt, my wife comes from a non-for-profit background. She was an investment banker, left that field, shifted to non-for-profit. She's currently an MBA student at IESE Barcelona. and having gone through my set of applications, having gone through her set of applications, I can assure you that at least all of the European schools, actually for that matter, even the US schools, they value non-for-profit background students a lot. Essentially, I can say, and knowing that I've interacted with students with similar profiles from a lot of these schools. I'm really good friends with people who are at INSEAD, then at ESA, IE Business School, LBS. Non-for-profit profiles need to ensure that they bring out the impact. That's the biggest angle that they're playing with, and they need to bring out the impact in their applications. Essentially, there's one more problem. Usually when you're working in a corporate environment, you can show growth or a trend towards, you getting to a certain path, and then you can weave that into your story that, you need experience on the managerial side. You want to handle a P&L at, 5 to 10 years down the line, had a team of your own, and that makes sense from an MBA application perspective. But non-for-profit, that's a very different path. And usually the monikers or the brands or the positions that you have held are very different. And hence it becomes very essential to weave your motivations, your impact, and what's your future plan, all of that into a good cocktail, and then pour it out in your MBA application. And having said that, we would love to interact more with candidates who have follow-up questions on this topic. Josh,
yeah, let me chime in on the non-for-profit. I think if you have like a legit background in it, it's actually a plus. So it's kind of preferred, and I think that's because maybe fewer non-profit applicants apply, and the top business schools want to have a good mix. So, so directly addressing the question, like if there are some schools that value it more than others, I would say like most value it a lot, but in my experience, like I would say Yale School of Management in the US is known to value it a little more. And in fact, if you look at their placement data, like a quarter of the class goes into non-for-profit. So they take a lot who, right, I guess, are sponsored by non-profit, and then they go into non-profit. So like maybe they go back to the non-profit, but then some do transition from industry into non-profits. I got into Yale School of Management. I think it's a beautiful place. I decided not to go because I wanted to go into finance, but it's when I did the like they had a video prompt, right? And my video prompt was the point of running a bit, like it gave me a prompt. The point of running a business is to maximize value for shareholders. Comment on this. And then, I had 20 seconds to come up with a response. And I said, absolutely not. There are other stakeholders. There's, the employees, there's the planet, there's the well-being of the customers, beyond just the shareholders. So, and I got in. So I think Yale School of Management certainly values it a little more. I also got into Berkeley Haas, right? I think Berkeley normally is traditionally a little more liberal or touchy-feely, so maybe Berkeley does. But beyond that, for any school, a strong background in nonprofit will be a plus in your column. But as Harshal said, like it's not enough to do a little volunteering here or there, or like a stint, like that may be like a nice cherry on top. But to really have a nonprofit strong profile, you need multiple years in the space. Ideally, you need it at a place that has a bit of a brand, like a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or something like that. And then you need some sort of progression and impact, which Harshal said. The most important thing is the impact. So you need to show that you tangibly helped the world, right? So it's not just a padding the resume kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks, both of you. Amazing inputs there. And guys, always remember impact. So just closing it with a few pointers on conclusion. Of course, schools don't prefer corporate over non-for-profit profiles. So you all have an equal ground, and both profiles have to showcase impact. And impact can be in the business trajectory or like direct impact on a real world problem, which can be a social problem or a business problem. They are looking for global business leaders who are going to tackle big problems globally after they graduate from global schools. So yes, think impact. And if you're able to bring it out in your applications, we've seen people from not-for-profit getting 100% scholarship at schools like INSEAD, LBS, Oxford SAID, and like Josh just mentioned, Yale, MIT, and Stanford. These are some of the schools that come on top of my mind when I see impact profiles or social impact profiles going to business schools.
Right. And Paridhi, just to add one more point, schools like Yale and very recently INSEAD, they have actually started supporting the students in their post-MBA journey by reducing their overall fee and hence reducing their loan amounts. And I think Yale also has a fund, which basically, on a monthly basis, you receive some sort of a support funds from, as sort of a payment and support from the school to help you with your career. So that's a very interesting concept, but it's there. And I see that a few other schools are moving in that direction. So just to, pitch it out there for the prospective students.
Amazing. All right, moving on and back to you guys. I'll just switch the slide. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I think I skipped one slide. Yeah. There you go.
Right. So next question is on how to show your leadership, leadership potential, achievements, and contribution to the community. Coming back to our non-for-profit sort of discussion, or even when we talk about communities here, we don't just mean the marginalized community or the marginalized people. It's also towards your larger ecosystem, how you have helped your friends, how you have helped your corporate colleagues in your in the same workspace as you, or how have you contributed to other programs wherein maybe you have led some sort of a training for potential new joiners in your firm, or even volunteering for other leadership positions wherein you're supposed to chart out a new or set up a new vertical, and you volunteered for the responsibility and you set out a plan on how to do it, and then obviously at some point you completed that task. Essentially you're trying to connect your achievements in your life with your motivations, and at the same time you're also trying to show a leadership potential that yes, you may not have shown leadership on just the corporate side of things. You may have shown leadership on outside the workplace in form of some proficiency in some sort of sports, martial arts. You could other skill sets like dancing, music. You have your own hobby, you have your own specific skill sets. One thing that comes to my mind, one of my very good friends from INSEAD, she was a base jumper, and she had done about 700 base jumps, which is the equivalent of paragliding and parachuting out of planes at different altitudes. Having done 700 jumps, it's a very different experience. One could say that it's a very single-minded skill set, but on the other hand, you're responsible for your own safety. You're responsible for the safety of the other colleagues who are in that journey with you, even if it's a 1 minute at a time sort of a jump. And you're overall responsible for the group. And so those sort of experiences can be brought out in your applications, and and help them tie up with other aspects of your aspirations post MBA. And it could be as good as setting up your own new paragliding institute. Like it could be as simple as that. But yeah, back to you, Paridhi.
I'll just chime in a bit on that for this like leadership achievements and contribution to the community. So if you have a really like time demanding job, which I did as an investment banker, and I was really struggling with this because I was like, oh no, I'm not involved in my community. But then I realized I did so much at my workplace, and pretty much because I was just at the bank all the time, that was my community, right? So I provided Excel modeling trainings. I also was the MC and organizer of our offsite, like a team building party, if you will. So I mean, those things are not very strong, but it's what I had, and it was authentic in the sense that a reader would say, okay, yeah, there's not a lot of like volunteering work, but he's working all the time as an investment banker, so we kind of get it, right? So the most important thing when answering these questions is to be authentic and that the narrative makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, go on, Herschel, if you want to add more.
No, Josh actually reminded me of my own experience and what I used in my application. So as a consultant with Ernst & Young, even I was in the office 24/7, more or less, traveling all around the world, delivering projects. So it doesn't exactly allow you too much opportunity to sort of specialize in anything else, or, even have a hobby for that matter. But this was pre-COVID, this entire drive of having a work-life balance within the consulting sphere. So coming back to the point, I had actually helped conduct an internal training for about 1,000 consultants in India, wherein earlier EY had a model where the consultants used to choose their own trainings and could do it all through the year, but which basically meant that they had to put in a lot of costs, and they had to have a big effort on the learning and development side to keep this program going on. What we then proposed in terms of switching to a newer model was, how about for 3 days every year, all consultants at all levels, including partners, will fly down to a central location. They will do their trainings there, also get to network, talk about other interesting topics, team collaborations, new pitches, new projects that are up and coming, and sort of give everyone a flavor of what an entire ecosystem of congruence can offer, help you build up your profile and your career at one of the leading consulting firms in India. And I use that as one of my motivations and show on how I contributed back to the community I came from. And this event in general, because we had centralized the entire effort, it had a lot of impact points that we could talk about, or I could talk about in my application. So that served me very well, and was even brought up in my interview at both INSEAD and LBS. Paridi, back to you.
Yeah. So just adding on a little bit, that this is like an advice that I help candidates understand when they're thinking about their narratives and stories about leadership and achievements. So just think that these schools are looking for very passionate individuals with strong personalities, trying to bring in impact in this world using MBA as a tool. So here you'll find your answers to like, why MBA, and then what's your goal, and how do you bring impact in, how do you connect the dots with your experience so far, your achievements and contribution. But the whole idea is to position yourself as a global business leader. And don't forget the keywords: passion, personality, and impact. These can come in when you have very strong achievements and leadership and contribution to the community together. If you're going to put it together, you will realize you'll be able to connect the dots and frame this sentence throughout your narrative. So great inputs from both of you guys. Back to you.
Thanks, Paridi. Moving to the next question on how to maximize your chances for scholarships. I would say scholarships this is probably one of the topics that is quite dependent on the time, at what point are you applying, what background you come from, which round are you applying, which schools are you applying. It's a mix of a lot of different topics. You could essentially read the 4 bullets here, but I can also give you some additional background. Scholarships, by and large, are need basis or academic excellence, or your corporate excellence basis, wherein you can show how you have made an impact and how you are a worthy candidate and would go on to do great things even after your MBA. So essentially, and depending on the school, some schools provide need-based scholarships. Other schools specifically also ask for academic excellence or proven track path. And for example, IE Business School is one of those. And when I had applied for a master's there, I had to justify both sides of the story, and only then I got my scholarship. Other schools like INSEAD, they essentially don't have a scholarship essay. At the end of your application, you just have to choose from the boxes on whichever applications you would like to apply for, and the adcoms would automatically choose your profile for these scholarships based on your INSEAD essays. So essentially, if you haven't shown your non-for-profit impact in your INSEAD essays or your contribution to the communities within the INSEAD essays, you will not even be eligible for the scholarships. And so from school to school, the approach changes a lot, and hence it's essential that the candidate keeps aside some time specifically to prepare for this one question. At the end of the day, it creates a big impact on the overall fee that you have to pay, or the overall loan that you will be paying for 5 to 10 years after your MBA program. I hope it's not 10 years, but then again. And yeah, and going back to the fourth bullet, which is on which round you're applying for. Usually international candidates are advised to apply in R1 and R2, specifically because of visa constraints, visa processing timelines, and also because of scholarship related issues, because these schools usually have their funds, and in the competition to secure the best candidates for their respective MBA programs, the schools usually stash out a certain amount of funds at the start, and these funds deplete after every round. Round 3 and round 4 are usually very difficult to get scholarships in, or even if you get the amount might be lower than what you could get during round 1 and round 2. Having said that, I know students who have applied in round 3 and got really good scholarships as well. So there are exceptions.
Amazing. Would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I'll chime in a bit on the scholarships. So it's definitely school and region specific in what they look for and how they use scholarships. So it's a lot of different dimensions. I will say, like, for every non-US school I attended, I got like near full scholarships, but then I paid full freight at Booth. And so there's some reasons behind that. Like, so for LBS, for example, which was similar to Harshil's experience at IE, it was very much like a merit-based scholarship, right? In the US, they typically use scholarships in 2 ways. So first, they will use scholarships as a way to pull a candidate who they feel like might be a little above their tier, but if they offer enough scholarship, they can get them to the school. So that would be maybe like, if I really want to go to Booth and they're not giving me any money, but Darden or USC gives me a full ride, I might think about that. This is a lot of money. The other consideration that schools, and I'll say this, and I got a small amount of money from Kellogg. I got $30K, and I tried to use that to negotiate with Booth, but they wouldn't do it. So I just decided to go to Booth anyway. But the other thing is that these schools, they want to create like the perfect class, and there's a lot of dimensions to add diversity to a class. So that's dimension of work experience, dimension of geographic background, and dimension of demographic background. So so they reserve giant piles of money to try to get to bring that almost like force that perfect diverse class. So if you're in an overrepresented group like Indian or white in the U.S. schools, that's not going to help you too much. But then you can increase your chance of getting the money by having a elite background. So that's what you can control. So back to you.
Yeah. All right. So yes, and negotiation, thanks for bringing that word in there. That's why it's important, guys, that you apply to multiple schools. We've seen our candidates and we've seen folks negotiating all the time when you've got multiple admits from top schools. And it's acceptable because you can let them know that you've gotten an admit in, let's say, Stanford, and negotiate a scholarship at Harvard for that. And we've seen candidates, they do end up getting more scholarships because, like Josh said, they want the best of the best. And they're kind of like, if you're competing for the schools, they're also competing for the candidates. So it's both ways. It's a marriage that's going to happen between you and the school's values, and school really cares about what's going to go in their career statistics. They want to be really proud of you guys. So you have to make that story for them. All right, I'm going to answer a couple of questions in a bit. I know you guys have a lot of questions around how many days it takes, whether I should start working on my applications alongside my GRE or GMAT preparation. And we are going to tackle a few questions in a bit. But before I jump onto the process, again, if you guys are looking to work with MBA and Beyond, we work with very limited number of candidates because each of our consultant only works with 3 to 4 candidates in a cycle. There is a reason for it. We work on a very different model of matchmaking you to the consultants. These consultants are full-time folks working at Bain, BCG, investment bankers. Some of them are Silicon Valley co-founders of big startups. Some of them are really working at a very top level position in Unilever, Nestle, oil and gas, but they've all gone to some of the top business schools, and they're purely into this for the love of mentorship and to really increase the intellectual average of business schools. So you're going to be really working with somebody who's taken a very similar journey like yourself. And alongside, we've also got a bunch of consultants who have been part of admissions directors group at different business schools like Stanford, INSEAD, and LBS. So if you're interested, please send us answer to these questions. Kashish from our value creation team is going to reach out to you, and the team is going to thoroughly evaluate your answers. They don't have to be spectacular. We just want to understand what's your approach of choosing a school, or what's your approach of putting your unique selling point forward for any business school that you're thinking. Going back, we're going to talk about our process, and herein you'll find your answers to how many days it really takes to pull off a kick-ass application, and whether or not you should start working on your application alongside your GRE and GMAT. There are a bunch of other questions which I'm going to answer shortly. So if you guys decide to come on board with MBA and Beyond, what your journey is going to look like, I'm going to break it down into 3 steps. And the first phase of this step is content gathering phase. This is purely for candidates who don't have clarity on what their narrative should look like. And there are a bunch of candidates, more than 90% of the candidates who work with us, they don't know how should they connect the dots, what their goals are, why do they need an MBA, why should they be putting in so much of money into an MBA and not do something else with that money. It's an expensive bet you're making here, guys. So you clearly need to know what you're going to get out of an MBA. So this content gathering phase is going to be split into 3 sets. We really want to understand you as a person and and your professional journey in and out before we can frame a strong branding for you or your narrative for any business school to buy. This phase also helps candidates who don't have understanding or clarity of schools that they should apply to. So again, more than 77% of the candidates who work with MBA and Beyond, they don't know which schools they should really apply to, because we come from a school of thought that just your GMAT score or GRE score and your professional resume is not sufficient enough to help you identify which school should you really apply to. There's a lot more goes into matchmaking between you and your schools, and you really have to understand the values of the schools that you're getting matched most with. And that's what leads to low GMAT and GRE scores successes into top schools, because you have the stories that the business schools love. For example, in INSEAD LBS, even if you're a little low GMAT score, but if you're heavy on international experience, they are going to really love your story, and they're going to pay attention to it. You could be a 770, but if you're not internationally exposed, these schools might not be the right fit for you. So GMAT has very little role to play over there. And I don't know if you guys know, INSEAD also announced this last year in Poets and Quants that they are welcoming low GMAT scorers as well, if you are matching the values of different business schools. Again, same goes for schools like Columbia and Duke Fuqua. We've seen candidates with very strong leadership and teamwork experience with low GMAT scores getting through and also getting more than 50% scholarship. I'm going to touch upon the international experience and the scholarship bit a little later as well, just to share an example with you guys what kind of profiles end up getting 100% scholarship, just for you to understand where you stand on the scale if you're trying to compare with somebody who's gotten a 100% scholarship. So going back to content gathering phase, it's going to be broken down into 3 steps. Set 1 is going to revolve around very high level questions around core and fundamentals of any business school, no matter what business school you're applying to. So we're going to be understanding from your perspective and your brain dump around what are your achievements, what are the leadership examples you bring to the table, what's the impact you've brought in your work, what kind of contribution to the community have you done, what is your reason for an MBA, what are your goals, why are these your goals, are you trying to switch your industry, function, and geography? How many should you really switch if you have to lay a very strong foundation? So you're going to be answering all these questions in set 1. This is you thinking in one dimension, purely from your own perspective. Set 2 is going to be about us helping, like you helping us understand from third person perspective, because we need to understand you without any self biases. Might I tell you, business schools have a knack of identifying self biases in your application. When I say self biases, they can clearly see through when you're trying to oversell yourself or you're trying to undersell yourself. And for you yourself to put yourself in the most neutral perspective, you really need to undo any kind of self biases in your application. And we, as your facilitator, need to understand you from third person perspective for that. So we're going to ask you to pick 3 really important people in your life. 1 personal connection, 1 professional, and the third one could be either of them. We're going to send them a really candid questionnaire, a little survey around your experiences with this person and your strengths and achievements from their perspective. How do they see you as a global business leader, etc. This really helps us play a very important role in you undoing any self biases. And second, very important thing, how smartly our candidates are using this. So some of our very clever candidates, they already get their recommenders to do this exercise for them. And you'll realize that a recommendation always has to be compatible with your essays, because it has to be a supporting piece of evidence that makes your case stronger in front of the admissions committee. So before you're even working on any of your essays, and if you kind of already know what your recommenders are really saying about you, what examples are they bringing on to the table for you, you may be able to make this compatibility much, much better than your peers. So you can also use your recommenders if you've got a good relationship with them to do this exercise for you. If they're invested in your growth, they can do it once, and then the story building will become much, much easier. This is set 2. Then we move on to set 3, which is the last set of content gathering phase. Here we really go deep into your personality. So we're going to put you through a personality test. And based on the results of the test, we're going to define the traits that become the backbone of your application, and everything else that you've done in your life is going to hang around it as a supporting piece of evidence. I want to say a sentence here. Business schools are not just looking for your professional piece of paper, which is your resume. They are also interested in you as a person. They want to know who are these people who are going to make this dynamic cohort of very interesting and intellectual people who are going to come out of the schools, and they need to be proud of you. So they are very, very invested in the personalities that you guys are. And you cannot just focus only on your professional journeys, even in your essays. This is a mistake that a lot of candidates make. We just make our application very, very heavy on professional journey. For this, it's important that you're going to go through this personality test, and with your mentor have personality driven discussions as well, so that you're bringing in the right personality to your application to match the values of the business school. Once you've done this journey you take with our content gathering specialist, who's also a very neutral therapy practitioner with a wide knowledge of all the top business schools, M7 and top schools in Europe. And she is able to identify what kind of stories are going to resonate with what schools, because she's been working in this space for more than 5 years. Now, what happens is, when you're done with content gathering, your consultant and you and the content gathering specialist, we're going to come up with a branding document for you. It's just a one-pager document, but it's your, okay, so for people who are working with startups, I hope you guys know what a business model canvas is. So this is just like your unique selling canvas to business schools, which is going to have your high-level storyline, your strategy, your theme, and your direction. This is your pager. You can stick it on the wall, one pager that reminds you every day, this is what your pitch is going to be to any top business school that you're applying to. Now, based on this pitch, your consultant is going to help you identify which schools you have the highest potential of converting. And we're going to bucket a few schools in dream bucket, in realistic bucket, and in safe bucket for you. And here on, your journey will start. You will realize, if you've really taken this journey, which will take good 15 to 17 days, you will be able to work out your essays, recommendation, and resume very smoothly, because it's going to be just a game of plug and play and fitting into the words that you're expecting. Your thinking work has already been done. Now, to your question, how many days does it really take to pull off a good application? I'm going to keep INSEAD apart and every other school here, because INSEAD is the heaviest application in the business school world, guys. It's double the time that it takes on an average for any business school. For any business school, combining essays, LOR, resume, video interview preparation will take you good 20 to 25 days. And we do recommend that kind of time for you to go back and maybe rephrase anything. So 20 to 25 days for any other school. For INSEAD, it's going to be smoothly 40 to 45 days. The more you have, the better. You really need to do a lot of thinking for INSEAD. It has 7 essays. They really want to know in and out of your life's journey. A lot of candidates who work on INSEAD and other schools like US and LBS, HEC, Oxford, Cambridge, they realize if they've done INSEAD, they feel like every other school is much easier application, and their thought process is very, very clear on how should they approach their application. And a lot of candidates just write INSEAD's application because they want to make other applications better. So that's the number of days. And Harshal, do you want to chime in for INSEAD there? Like how people are like really, they get creeped out. Oh my God, for 45 days.
I think 45 days. I mean, the work you guys are doing is just exceptional. I remember I wanted to apply in INSEAD round 2. Yeah. And I had already done my applications the first time around in 2015. So I was very confident that I'll sail through in a week. I don't need anyone's help. Yeah. I looked at INSEAD application, I closed it, and I said round 3, not going to happen in 2. And then I did, and INSEAD was the last application I did, and I did like 10 applications. So, and it took me more than 60 days.
Wow. Wow. And yes.
And I would say INSEAD, but by the time you get to your 4th or 5th application, right, your applications get more polished with every level. Yeah. And essentially, when I was applying for my MBA, me and my wife, we were looking for MBA programs where we could go as a couple. So our, ideal set of MBA schools was very different from the usual parameters that we use. And I remember INSEAD was like doing 9 applications for myself, the 9 applications for my wife. That was easier than doing that 1 application.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. But yes, I can totally relate, because I've heard a lot of candidates say that as well. Then another question we've got on the table here is whether I should appear for my GMAT GRE, even though Josh has tried to answer that. I just wanted to share a little stat here. Around 40% of the applicants we work with, they have either not taken GMAT GRE yet, or they are reappearing. And there is a reason for it, because the process, like I just walked you through, the kind of introspection and the kind of narrative building that you need to do. And if you're really depending on your consultant to help you identify the schools for you as well, you need to get the ball rolling. You really need to start working alongside parallelly, if you are really relying on the consultant and the team of expertise to really help you understand where you really stand. But what I do expect that applicants should know how much they are really scoring in mocks. So there has to be some benchmark. You need to know. I mean, you can't be at a 590 and say, I'm trying to get a 740 in a month's time and I need to start working, because that doesn't sound realistic. But yes, if you're trying to get at a 740 and you're already getting a 710 and maybe you have just 2 months at hand, you can start working on your applications, because most of the round 2 deadlines are in January. If you're already scoring 680, 700, and for the schools that you're aiming for, the average is 720-ish, then you can start working on your applications and alongside maybe keep on. I'll give you an example of Kirtana. She's sitting in Fuqua right now with 60% scholarship. She attempted her GMAT last year with us 8 times while working on 9 of her applications. And she started from somewhere which was 640 and she ended up getting a 730. She got a 730 just 2 days before clicking the submit button of, I think, 3-4 of her applications in early action round. So you can, if you are a person who can tackle both the things alongside, I'd say right now you should, because you only have 2 months. If you're thinking for 3 or more schools, you don't have that kind of time. Yeah. Do you guys want to add something? Josh?
Sorry, I was a bit lost in just answering a lot of chat messages. But,
no worries. Yeah,
I think, yeah, you do need to be realistic of where you're at with your GMAT or GRE process. And I almost feel like the application in terms of, you know, your essays, your letters of recommendation, your short answer responses, your resume, all of that is kind of separate from the exam scores. And in a perfect world, you would max out your exam scores and be happy with them before doing the, you know, the essays, because what, you know, there are 2 ways to approach this. And the one way is I will max out my scores and then I will choose the school that I want. The other way to approach this is I will get a score and then I will choose a school based on how the score allows me to choose, right? So in all cases, you would prefer to be the former. You'd prefer to have the score that you want for the program that you want before spending all that time on these essays. So if you feel like you're stuck with you know, a USC score, but you really wanted to go to Fuqua, you really wanted to go to Yale School of Management or Booth or something, the problem is not the essays. The problem is not optimizing the application. The fundamental problem is that you need the better score, and you might need another 3 months. You might need another cycle, right? So being honest with where you're at is crucial to success. So we're in the business of helping you succeed. We're not going to window dress or try to you know, make it out like your application is going to go somewhere that's not.
All right, thanks. There's a question around the years of work experience, and I think there are candidates on both the sides of the bell curve. There's some people with 2 years of experience, and there are others with more than 10 years of experience. So what would you both have to say? Maybe Josh, Herschel, yeah.
I say,
yeah, I'll start.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
You can go. Okay, I'll start. Yeah, so what really matters is you have to convince the admissions committee that it's an appropriate time for your career to do the MBA now. But first, I will split schools into 2 camps. So for whatever reason, like Harvard and Stanford, they're fine with you if you just like came right out of undergrad. Probably you had to go to like an Ivy League or Oxbridge or IIT or something like that, but you come right out of undergrad and then you created some app to save the world or something. You know, I have seen Harvard and Stanford take those type of applicants. The other time that if you're really young it works is if you got admitted to like a Harvard 2+2 or Yale Silver Scholars, or Booth has like a Booth Scholars or Maroon Scholars. So there are programs for people who just came out of undergrad, but you have to be so ahead of the curve and everything has to be perfect for that. In general, then for people who have a career already and they're thinking about business school, you have to tie the dots and convince them that now is the right time for you. So generally that's going to differ based on industry. It can work if you're already at a consulting firm, and generally how it works is you might spend 2 years at the consulting firm, and then at that time, different companies are trying to pull you from the consultancy, but the consultancy is trying to keep you there. So they might say, well, we'll pay for you to go do the MBA, right? Something like that. So then that sort of thing is where it works if you've only had 2 years of experience or so. For myself, I had about 5 years. It's more typical. Rose the ranks a bit in investment banking, and then did stint in a startup. And then I had a clear reason for coming and doing the MBA. I was 1 year back in the US, and I felt like I needed a US brand and US networks as an American with only 1 year experience in the US. So there's a lot of reasons. If you have a little bit more work experience, like 7 years or whatever, as I mentioned in the chat, my roommate at Booth, he was on the older side. He was 32 when he started the program. He had done all these startups and stuff, and he wanted to transition to be like at an Amazon or something as a product manager. So wanted like that boost to get him to a bigger brand, and he was able to convince them that it made sense. So the most important thing is convincing the adcom that it makes sense at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'll repeat for what Josh has said. And Harshal, do you want to chime in for something?
Right. I guess in the number of years, so Josh has aptly put it, number of years matters, but not that much. What matters is the story. Yeah. Are you trying to change your geography? Are you trying to change your sector? Are you trying to get into a completely different job? Let's say you were in the corporate world and now you want to do your own startup. So you're looking for a network where you can raise money. Let's say you were from a startup background, you have done that gig, don't like it anymore. You want to get onto the corporate side, maybe preferably into a leadership program. Let's say you were from a industries background and you want to get into consulting. It depends. What path are you going to take? It could be that you are a sponsored candidate, or you may not be a sponsored candidate. You're in a very good corporate and you want to continue on the same path, but eventually you want to head your own P&L, have your own team, and hence you need managerial skills, you need finance skills, you need marketing and other common job function skills for you to be the right person to deliver and take that next leap of faith. It's all about the story and where exactly in terms of your 5 and 10 year vision are you currently at, and does the MBA configure into that story or not? Otherwise, it would be very difficult to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're running out of time. I mean, we've already overshot and we all have to go somewhere. Guys, I think we've tried to answer as many questions as possible, but if you've got more questions, you can always book a free profile evaluation call. You'll be speaking to profile experts. We're sitting at top business schools, so you can have a more detailed discussion around the questions that you have, which are very specific to your profiles. In general, like for questions where I saw multiple questions around, I have a low GPA and what should I do to tackle that? Quickly, like get a better score at GRE or GMAT. That's really something that helps you overpower a low score and focus on a very strong narrative so that the attention is taken away from low scores that you have. So thanks, Josh, and thanks, Harshal, for joining us tonight. It was a very interesting session, and I hope you guys enjoyed with both of them. Thank you, and happy Diwali, everyone. Have a great evening and morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Bye, guys. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Happy Diwali.